This is the Pharmaverse podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pietrack, engaging leaders from the pharma universe. Hello and welcome to the Pharmaverse podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pietrack. And if you're a leader or an aspiring leader in the pharmaceutical industry, you've come to the right place because we interview the brightest stars from every corner of the pharma universe. And today we're going to be talking with the co-founder of Lipella Pharmaceuticals, Michael Chancellor, MD, who's going to share insights gained over a 40-year career. So Michael, welcome to the Pharmaverse.
Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you for the invite. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, we got to tell this story because you're a board certified urologist, 40 years of practicing medicine. You're a published author in urology, but you don't have an undergraduate degree. Is that true?
Yes, Michael, and you ratted me out, and I've always been honest with this on my CV. So I went to med school in the late 90s, and you're too young for that. But back then, pre-med was the thing. And I was at the University of Michigan, which was probably the biggest pre-med mill in the country. And it was so hard. In my first semester, I was getting mostly B's. And I looked myself in the mirror and I said, Michael, there's no way you're going to get into med school with B's. So I hunkered down and I got straight A's, a D English after that. And after 3 years, this is so hard. Medical school is probably going to be easier. What if I have all the requirements? What if I apply and get in? I could save a year. The worst thing that could happen is I have to, complete my senior year and my 120 credit. But I did get in, and that's how I went down the Doogie Howser path.
Well, speaking of Doogie Howser, when I heard that you went to medical school early and didn't get an undergraduate degree, the first thing I thought of was Doogie Howser, where you were like several years younger, like a child in medical school. But that wasn't really the case, right? You were just a couple years younger.
Yes, and that's true. And in hindsight, that was just when the price of university and medical school started to go up, and I had all these student loans, so it turned out to be a good thing. And part of the leadership is in the entrepreneurial space is giving it a try. I just decided that I'm going to do this and then gave it a try and I got in and that's really worked out well. There's no deficit. I have an MD degree, but I'm not a college graduate.
That's incredible. That's just incredible. And now it's kind of the opposite. You're going from being, the young person on campus, but then after a 40 years of clinical practice, now you find yourself as a rookie biotech entrepreneur leading a startup. Tell us what you're developing there at Lipella Pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, I am an entrepreneur, a doogie in the biotech space, and I really do have the gray hair and the Medicare card to prove my age. But I think part of the inspiration, whatever, is like you're never too old. If I could do it with my Medicare card, starting a biotech company and taking it out of the university and moving it into a clinical trial with the FDA and going public. And so that's something that's possible, and it's just an incredible ride. I love it.
Yeah, we're going to dive in more there, but I'm glad you brought this up because I don't want to make this all about age, but I think it's really an inspiring element to the story, because a lot of people that maybe are at your tenure of career are thinking about winding things down, golfing more, going on vacations, traveling, seeing the world. And here you are creating a startup at Lipella Pharmaceuticals. And I can't wait to dive into the story of what you're developing. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so it was when I was a professor at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. It's a tertiary referral center, Mecca, for the Western Pennsylvania area. And I was being sent these cancer survivors, men with prostate cancer, men and women with colon, and women with uterine cancer. They survived the cancer. They had surgery, radiation, chemo. But now the sequela of the radiation and chemo is severely damaged their bladder. So it's a disease. It's an orphan disease called hemorrhagic cystitis. The radiation is pretty toxic. To kill the cancer, but you pay a price. It causes bleeding, contraction, scarring, incontinence, and pain. So it was face to face with these patients that was being sent to me and needing blood transfusion, hospitalization, that I thought that, this is we have a technology for delivered drug in the bladder, and I could do this. I think I have a good drug that we can put in the bladder and make this condition better quickly. And that was the inspiration. It's not like the typical research where it's a benchtop idea, a new gene, a new molecule moving to the bedside. It was at the bedside on a need that the patient challenged me to come up with something with better to help them. Then I thought of something, move it to the bench top to confirm it worked, and then bring it back to the bedside, and now moving into clinical trial.
Yeah, very atypical. What's the name of the disorder again?
It's called hemorrhagic cystitis. And the first thing that really helped the company get started is we defined it. And it's the FDA granted an orphan disease designation, the first one for cancer survivor. It's prevalence about 60,000 American have the condition after pelvic radiation and chemotherapy.
It's my new hangman word. I can't even say it. So tell us the actual story. So you're face to face with one of these patients. You're challenged to come up with a therapy. So how did you solve the problem there?
Yeah, so my partner, John Kaufman, the CEO of Lipella, we started a company that has a proprietary liposome delivery for bladder and body cavity. And we have the patent off of an NIH National Institute of Health grant. So we had a really good idea as a platform, but there's no drug or disease that we feel compelled to move forward on. And seeing this cancer survivor, it's sort of like a light bulb moment that I could reposition an old drug, tacrolimus, which is the most potent and very strong anti-inflammation and immune rejection drug. That I thought, no, if we could put that in the bladder, we can block the inflammation and stop the little blood vessels from bleeding and do it immediately and have high local drug effect while minimizing systemic effect. And that was just sort of taking a known drug, but we're going to put it in the bladder based on the platform we have. And now can we do this?
So we've already spoken about Doogie Howser one show. Now we're going to talk about MacGyver. It's like
Yeah.
you're in the trenches. You're coming up with something right away.
Hey, you're coming up with all these. I'm going to wait for the next one now. I do like MacGyver. I mean, that I'm old enough to have seen MacGyver when it was first on. So,
Well, it really seems like that's what it is. Like you're in there,
yeah.
you're trying to come up with a solution and that aha moment.
Yeah. No,
But
no.
really,
You're right. The biotech is so hard and it's so expensive. And you're taking like a team of a few people in Pittsburgh, which is not like the mecca of the world. So you gotta go MacGyver. You can't invent a molecule. It takes too long, too expensive. So we found a generic, off the shelf, really, really strong drug that's dangerous if given systemically, and we delivered it safely in the bladder. And then we chose a disease with great unmet need, 4 to 5% mortality, and thereby the FDA really gave us allow us to go immediately to a phase 2A trial. So these are things MacGyver would do, and it's something we did as to starting off in a pharma space in Pittsburgh with limited money and limited resources.
we're all rooting for you, obviously, but I got to tell you, coming up with a therapy MacGyver style in the clinic,
Yeah.
but then starting a company,
Yeah.
those are two separate deals. Those are two big skill sets. So what has been the biggest challenge so far in starting the company?
Yeah, it's money. That would be the raising enough money. You're only as good as your next raise. But it's, I think that going back to the doogie, the only best time to do this is when you're a young man or woman and you can take risks. Or Odie doogie, when my kids are grown up, the mortgage is paid off. My wife just say, "Oh, you do what you want to do. Just don't get in trouble." So I have the luxury of taking chances. So I found a partner with startup experience, and he believed in above all else, to make a successful company return to shareholders, like, oh gosh, we can do something good here and be the first drug for a disease, orphan, cancer survivor that's never been done. So it's a big leap of faith to go from a tenured professor at the university to believe we have a chance to move it into starting up a small but private company, getting the funding, and getting it into and starting a national clinical trial. Luck and just perseverance.
Well, where are you in the clinical trial process?
Yeah, so because going back, we have a B2 repositioning and an orphan indication. The FDA knows the drugs and believe in that there should be a drug for this disease. They let us go right into 2A. So after we've done all the toxicology, we were able to go right to a national multi-center dose escalation study. And we actually completed the trial successfully with efficacy data. And now with the FDA again, with we are ready to go. We need to raise the money, but we are ready to go to the a phase 2B multi-center double-blind placebo trial. So it's we passed the hurdle into the big trial phase.
This episode is brought to you by K. Bassman International, the leader in pharma and biotech recruiting. When pharma executives need to make critical hires, they go to the experts at K. Bassman, pharma's one-source staffing solution. Visit kbic.com. Now back to the episode. I gotta say, and all during this, all these big milestones that you're hitting and very big processes that take a lot of work, you guys also went public?
Yeah, and we went public in December 21st, 2022. So just toward the end of the pandemic, and it was somehow we got the clinical trial done even during the pandemic with all the medical lockdown. That was a very scary thing going public. The amount of lawyers, high-priced lawyers, New York lawyers you have to work with, preparing the pitch deck, the S1s. But we did it, and as soon as we did it, I was like so scared. I was sort of used to being capable as a private company. Now we got NASDAQ, SECs, and all that. But fortunately, with good counseling, now I feel very comfortable. And I'm really excited because by public company now, our chances of succeeding and doing good is dramatically increased versus when we were a small little private company in Pittsburgh.
Cool. What has been like the biggest surprise in taking a company public? Because, a lot of us will never even have that opportunity in life. So what are some of the surprises?
Yeah, that how smart everybody on Wall Street is. Yeah, these doctors, I'm working with the brightest, but people on Wall Street are totally smart, ruthless, and efficient too, to be honest. They are successful, they are the cream of the crop to make it and to learn that relationship. We're friendly, and my partner and CEO and we just trust each other intuitively. But the transactional and the contractual based relationship, having to read all these legal documents that I never used to read, is something that's surprising to me, and how careful that I have to be at all time, what's in the public domain and what is not. But my respect for the Wolf of Wall Street has gone way up since I've, hanging out with the Wolf Pack.
That's it. That's it. Well, so, the Pharmaverse podcast is a
Yeah,
leadership podcast at its core.
yeah.
And I'm just thinking about your career, 40 plus years, all these really cool, amazing things that you've done. What is the most profound leadership learning that you can share with us over a 40-year career?
Yeah, and I've been not only in the startup now, but in the university. I'm a professor. I ran a lab. 20 people worked in my lab. I got to get funding for them. So I'm always thinking about money 5 years from now to keep it going. I train medical students, residents, fellows. So, and I realized the quality of we no none of us can do it alone. We need a team, and you just can't be sure how experienced or how dedicated, talented each person is. So I've just learned, especially being in the surgery, and I'm doing a big surgery, and I have students, residents, and fellows helping me. I can't trust. It's my job to help them, to help me, and to do it successfully. But I have to go first. I have to lead by example. So if something doesn't go right, I have to take responsibility, and I'll show them the example. And I'm not a very critical person. So if they screw up, there's no yelling involved anytime in my career. They will know gently that they could have done a better job, but I will suck it up and fix the problem there. And hopefully the people that will stay will learn that, and they will contribute as things comes up, and they know what their expectation is. But I don't criticize people. I rather give them an examples to step up to, because if you're the professor and you get young students and residents, you have to be a role model. You can't be the disciplinarian.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great insight. My perception of leading in a clinic, when you're the head doctor there, is very hierarchical. But sometimes in a company, it's almost like it's servant leadership. Sometimes the laws and the pendulum has swung where, like, the boss isn't always the boss. It's not as hierarchical as you might find in a clinic. Is that true? Or is that just my perception?
I think it's true that it's really talent based. That if I find a CRO, they trying to bullshit you by selling you something. But sometimes some of them, even within a corporation, is very good. I'll make them feel comfortable and genuinely that, I'm not Dr. Chancellor. I'm, Michael from not the Pharmaverse Michael, but the Lipella Michael. And I'll just work with them directly, tell them it's safe, and always behave that way. If something goes wrong, I'll suck it up. It's because all these clinical trial stuff, I'm the CMO, I'm the MD, it's my idea, I'll take the responsibility. And here and there, we'll find really, really capable people that likes that, and we succeed. But then there are other CMO, CRO, CMO that just doesn't work like that, or insist on the big diagram of organizational structure, and that relationship just gets dropped. So we sort of work with like-minded people.
What other differences are there from leading a clinical team in a surgery setting to leading a biotech as a CMO?
Yeah, what the money is the first thing that right now that we're always, the burning the runway that you have to worry about in a drug company. In the academic setting, the money is less direct. We got to get the grant. But the very first is the Hippocratic Oath. It sounds corny, but you got to do right one patient at a time. In the clinic, I'm responsible for every investigator, every patient at every site. So to me, to be honest, I feel there's more similarities than differences, because it's the character, the root character. I think it translates, and I don't think I could have done this if I was in my 20 something before I was married, a kid. I think those experiences, by writing these complex documents to the FDA, to the National Institute of Health, to the universities, is helped me prepare to be able to handle these complex documents with Wall Street, with the FDA, with the IRB and such. Yeah, that's my opinion.
I do see the similarities. I mean, you're taking ownership, you're teaching people around you how to help you, and you're leveraging other people's expertise, maybe more so than you did actually as a clinician,
Yes,
because you're
yes.
the expert. But now the CRO has their expertise, the lawyers in Wall Street have their expertise. And it has to be more of a team environment, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and to trust the investor relationship. We have a good relationship with PCG. I trust them because I there are things I just don't know. And if they're credible and you start off, and there's going to be peaks and valley, you stick with it, and they'll appreciate that too. And I honestly enjoy my relationship with the different groups of Wall Street people. It's fascinating to me. And yeah, I believe they're good people, tough people, but good.
You know, I've been looking at the analytics of who our audience for this podcast actually is, and there's quite a bit of physicians
Yeah.
that are not yet in pharma that
Yeah.
listen to our podcast. So let's talk to them right now. If they were thinking about taking a similar road as you've taken,
Right.
leaving the clinic, going
Yeah.
into the private sector, going into pharma, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, that just look at me. That if I could do it, and I only got into med school just because I was getting B's in my first semester and I hunkered down. They could too. It's you're so ingrained. We are as human being, we're afraid of change. And I've crossed three valleys of death. Like I started off as an MD, busy surgery and patient, but I wanted to be able to do more and the novelty. So I crossed the valley of death from being a clinical MD into a physician scientist, right? To getting grants, NIH grants, the respect of not only your colleague, but your dean of the medical school. Then I had to cross the valley of death, leaving the ivy towers of a university, move into like the borrowed furniture of a startup type of garage thing. And the third valley of death is like, oh, you can putz around with genes and molecule, is to actually bring it back into a clinical trial and dealing with the FDA, which and getting it an IND approved, getting a trial done, and the different communication. But each one of those, I had no idea how to do it before I did it, but I knew I had, the risk mitigation with and acceptance approval of my wife. And then by having a people I could partner with and trust and friend with, I was able to jump off the deep end. And each one of them, I never knew the next valley of death is going to be worse than the previous one. And actually, the third one is harder than the first one. But as I stick with it, we stick together and giving enough time to get the money and the expertise, it's all doable, really. Somebody there's no specific training for this entrepreneurial stuff. You know this, Michael. You just got to do it with a good idea and great people.
Yeah, it's true. You got to grind and you got
Yeah,
to
it's
you got to
grind.
live it, you know?
Yeah.
So I want to ask more of a granular question about leadership. Um, you've led teams, you've led departments. Now you're, CMO leading a company. When you're dealing with an individual, let's say they're underperforming, and you've kind of talked about this already. You're not going to browbeat them. You're going to show them an example of what good looks like. What else can someone on a one-on-one basis with one of their employees do to help get them up to speed and get them to where the manager wants them to be?
Yeah. And this is a little bit corny, but from Pittsburgh, I used to live like 3 blocks from where Fred Roger grew up. So
Okay.
literally grew up in Mr. Rogers'
Three
neighborhood.
TV shows now.
Yeah, no, three. That's perfect. That's perfect. The three. That's how I got in. Mr. Roger. And we go to the church where Mr. Roger was the elder at before he passed away for 30 years. And my wife and I worship Mr. Roger more than MacGyver and Doogie. Uh, and his motto is just be good and do good and tell people, which he does every day to his employees, and that I am proud of you. Just saying, Joe, things are not working out and I need you to do this, but I am proud of you and I'm going to do this. We got to be, we got to do this together. If you can't do it, let me know and I'll help you. Because I know if really Joe can't do this particular thing after a while, Joe would leave the scenario, will leave the company, or not be our contact at a CRO, because we're here to do good and we're going to be good. And I am proud of you. I want the person try to step up and fulfill that shoes, because in almost all situations when that doesn't happen, there's a friendly departure. But more often than not, the person is still with us. We just don't have people leaving our team, because we're here to do good and we're going to be good. And I am proud of you. There's that. I'll get off my Mr. Roger pedestal.
No, I love that. I love that. That's such good advice. And, you know, Doogie Howser in the beginning, Then we learned how you became MacGyver, and then as a manager, you're like Mr. Rogers. It's a beautiful neighborhood out. Looking at the clock, though, sadly, that's all the time we have for the episode. But we've all enjoyed learning your story. We're all rooting for Lipella and rooting for you to buck all the odds again in your career. And so thank you for joining us on the Pharmaverse.
Well, thank you, Michael, for having me and talking about Lopella. And you do a great job with the Pharmaverse podcast. And I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thanks again. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Pharmaverse. Make sure to follow the pod so you don't miss any career enhancing insights. Thanks for listening. See you next time on the Pharmaverse. Thanks for joining us on the Pharmaverse podcast. Make sure you subscribe below so you don't miss any leadership insights. Like and comment. I would love to hear from you. We'll see you on the next episode of Pharmaverse.